In 1938, Ingalls Iron Works of Birmingham, Alabama, owned by Robert Ingalls, set their sights on Pascagoula for a new shipyard. Its deep-water channel, rail access, and room to grow made Pascagoula perfect for a shipyard that could compete for cargo and passenger ship contracts from the U.S. Maritime Commission. To develop the site required a $100,000 bond issue. Moss Point consultant Eddie Kayat says District 3 Supervisor Hermes Goche made sure the referendum passed.
And Mr. Goche said, all I want you to do is give me permission to have those bonds issued on District 3, $100,000. And they voted for him to go along. Otherwise, you would never have had Ingalls Shipyard in this county.
With the bond secure, Robert Ingalls' plan was to produce the world's first all-welded ships.
They took the design of the C3 to the Maritime Commission. It was an all-riveted ship, and convinced them that that ship could be built much more quickly and run smoothly at a savings in steel and a much better operation all the way around, all welded.
Ship production began in early 1939. The cargo ship SS Exchequer was the first with the steel plates of its hull welded end to end rather than overlapped and riveted. It was launched in 1940, actually without a shipyard.
The steel was being fabricated in Birmingham to Ingalls plant, brought down on what was termed a 300-mile assembly line. And that's exactly the way the first ships were built, were probably 80% fabricated right in Birmingham, put on railroad cars or on the sections and pieces, on cars or on trucks, and brought to Pascagoula, erected. Then, at the same time, the yard was under construction.
Other cargo ships as well as passenger liners were built. Then World War II directed the shipyard's efforts from building ships for commerce to building them for America's defense. During the war years, production ran around the clock as thousands of men and women built more than 60 ships. After the war, shipyard owner Robert Ingalls told county supervisors he'd have to close the yard unless the Pascagoula River could be dredged from 22 to 30 feet to accommodate bigger ships. With a $250,000 state appropriation and a $500,000 bond issue, the shipyard stayed open. But about the only business to be had was converting warships.
That was just about it. Then we went in at our yard over in the old East Bank yard. We were producing anhydrous ammonia tanks, lock gates, any other kind of fabricated steel we could find.
By the 1950s, though, the yard began producing sophisticated ships for the Navy's combatant fleet. Also, as the atomic age emerged, conventional and nuclear-powered submarines were built. Litton Industries bought Ingalls in 1961 and began planning for a new shipyard that was to be built in Tampa, Florida. A special legislative session in 1967 appropriated $130 million to build the yard in Pascagoula.
But we had to do something. Jackson County, Mississippi, we had to become involved. So what we did, we gave them, or the state, $1, 600 acres of land, or what's now known as West Bank.
When this is in full bloom, there should be 13 or 14,000 workers, whereas now they're around 9,000.
The new shipyard's first two contracts included the Tarawa class of general-purpose amphibious assault ships and Spruance class multi-mission destroyers. Later, the Spruance class would serve as the design base for a new class called Aegis, a combat and radar system that would better protect ships from missile threats. The first ship of the class, USS Ticonderoga, was built at Ingalls in 1979. Today, Ingalls is building a new class of multi-purpose assault ships, beginning with WASP LHD-1, followed by the second ship, Essex. Work is also underway on the Navy's future generation of destroyers, the Arleigh Burke DDG-51 class. Last year, Ingalls won the contract to build the second ship, Barry DDG-52. Ingalls is also known for overhauling and repairing existing ships, the most recent being the battleship Wisconsin and the missile-damaged frigate USS Stark. Both vessels are now back in service. Candy production was inspired during the late 1940s when dignitaries visiting the Ingalls-owned Longfellow House were served a Southern favorite, homemade pralines. When guests asked for some to take home, Robert Ingalls opened the Longfellow Candy Company, first at what's now a restaurant and later on 14th Street. Candy orders were sent out to meet the growing demand and then were promptly returned. The candy's shelf life expired before it reached the marketplace.
As good as we were at building ships, we obviously had not mastered the art of either making candy nor the art of vacuum packing the candy, which was a keen element of that market at the time.
I don't know where you got that idea about candy, but that didn't last long. A guy named Tom Green tried to talk him out of it, but he persisted, and he lost, and he closed it. It was good candy. I ate some of it.
But apparently not good enough. The candy business was such a disaster that when Robert Ingalls died in 1951, the Longfellow Candy Company closed the next day. In 2 different periods, Ingalls built rail cars. The company's only locomotive was produced in the years following World War II for a Mobile rail company.
It was a wall-welded two arrangement, and diesel electric, had a raised cab, something brand new that you had good aft visibility as well as forward visibility, which most locomotives didn't. And it only got into the one that was built.
For economic reasons, Guest says the project was abandoned. Ingalls President Jerry St. Pei credits the construction of 4,000 grain rail cars in the early 1970s for high employment levels.
It demonstrates what we know about this shipyard, know about the employees, and that is there's tremendous diversification here and tremendous capacity on the part of the employees and the management to respond to whatever the situation may be. So rail cars in the 70s were a major part of high levels of employment in the shipyard during that period of time.
The candy and rail car ventures were unfortunately unsuccessful, but never reflected on what Ingalls does best, build ships. Over the last 50 years, Ingalls has provided jobs for hundreds of thousands of South Mississippians. Employees like Carl D'Angelo, Mickey Baggett, and Napoleon Thigpen have all been with the company since the early days. Each can recall the many changes that have emerged in the shipyard in its first half-century.
I have seen Ingalls grow from the launching on the shipways to the modular concept over the years. And I have seen a tremendous change and the growth in Ingalls.
They keep advancing in technology, and every move they make is to build a ship faster, cheaper, and a better quality ship.
You got better lifts, better working condition, and everything. From when I came in the yard, we didn't have that kind of working condition. So we had to almost do it by hand.
At a Wednesday night party saluting Ingalls, the employees were praised for their high work ethics and positive attitudes, which have helped earn Ingalls the reputation as America's shipyard.
Ingalls employees, like the Olympic medal winners, exemplify what is best about America: hard work, courage, and a never-say-die spirit that seldom settles for second best.
And we also have some of the finest shipbuilders in the country right here in Pascagoula. The welders, the pipe fitters, all of you that work in the shipyard do a great job.
As for the workers, they say they're proud to be a part of what they describe as the world's best shipyard.
You talk with different vendors that come in, and the sailors, they come in here and get one ship and come back on another, and every one of them, they brag about these ships to no end.
It's the best shipyard I ever worked at. And I hadn't worked at but one, and that's this one. And I enjoy working here.
In the words of Jerry St. Pei, the men and women of Ingalls have been pioneers in the best American tradition, boldly seeking new frontiers and committed to meeting every challenge. In its first 50 years, Ingalls has built and delivered 273 of the world's best ships, ranging from cargo vessels to defense ships. That record has earned Ingalls an international reputation of getting ships built ahead of schedule and under cost. That reputation's also guaranteed contracts into the next decade that should add to the 11,000 workforce.
And then just based on more than $4 billion in backlog of business that we currently have in hand, involving the delivery of ships that go out into the early 1990s, we look today to a very bright future in our company with employment levels not just getting back to where they are today, but going up to as much as 12 or 13,000 in the next 18 months or 2 years from now.
Ingalls has been able to rack up such a huge backlog in business because the workers say the shipyard's never been unable to meet a challenge.
I think if there's any work that is made, that is built, any ships are built for the Navy or anyone else, that Ingalls will get their fair share of it.
I've been here long enough to see the up and down, and the only thing I see now is the up part again.
For the next 10 years, they will be building ships. They got that many contracts and that much money, and of course it's a boon to all of Mississippi.
With an unlimited future ahead, Ingalls is looking toward the next half-century with the same determination that the original owners of shipbuilding envisioned in 1938 when it all began. Jerry St. Pé says with a strong marketplace that's ideally tailored to both the experience and capability of Ingalls and its workers, there's reason for everyone to be encouraged by the future.